Purposely. Your life, God's purpose. Listen at purposely.com.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Gospel Tech Podcast. My name is Nathan Sutherland, and this podcast is dedicated to helping families love God and use tech. Today, we are talking about how we can win at tech conversations at home, because this is an intimidating topic. When we have to talk about technology, it's almost always because there's a problem. Like, very rarely are we just opting in to talk about the nuance and details of technology in our family. It's always one of those, when you used to get called to talk with your parents, and they'd be like, "Hey, can you come over here for a minute?" You're like, "Oh no." Like, you're running through a Rolodex of like, what have I done wrong? How much do they know? How much do I have to, like, that's how tech conversations can go. And that is exactly what we want to avoid, because in talking about tech a lot, we are trying to accomplish two things. We are trying to accomplish just the normal rhythms of talking about technology because it's in our life, and we want our kids to know that. And we want to know what they're doing with tech and what they think about tech and the questions they've got. And when things go right, we want to be able to talk about that. Like, hey, I've noticed when you use your smartphone, you're connecting with your friends, and that really seems to be boosting and benefiting your relationships. Cool. We can say those words. You can say, "Hey, I really enjoyed watching you play that video game the other day because it seems like it's a really cool plot or really interesting, challenge," or whatever you might want to say to them. That's positive. And when it's not, you also need to be able to say those things, but not just show up to drop the hammer and then walk away. And it sort of starts to feel like a game of whack-a-mole where your kid's like, "How long can I get away with this before mom or dad shows up and yells at me about it?" So we're going to get those tech wins. I like this because I really do see this as one of my three primary jobs. My first job is to help you talk about tech well. My second is to help you communicate the gospel, the hope that in Christ that we are new creations. And the third is then to apply that hope to your daily tech life. This is my entire day-to-day work. And the more often I get in front of parents and get the opportunity to equip you to have these, the more successful the work I'm trying to do is. So that is why I exist. It is not to get my voice out there or to get more listeners on this podcast. This podcast exists because it helps me do that work. And really, at the end of the day, my job isn't just to equip you as parents, but to help raise kids who love God and who use tech so that they know this tech is going to help me. It's going to benefit me. It makes me look like Jesus. Or, you know what? It's cool. It's well made. It's entertaining. And it's not something that I need in my life. And we are seeing that because when parents know how to have these conversations, the kids are then equipped and empowered to make those decisions for themselves, not just roll with what everybody else is doing. So let's jump in. There's three areas. We're going to look at our family, we're going to look at our children, and then we're going to look at our relationships. So first is family. When you go, the first way to get a tech win when you're talking about technology is to go to your children and talk about what your family expects with technology. The first thing you need to establish with your family is your priorities. You can just talk about, hey, like, what's important to us as a family? It could be a formal conversation. I would encourage it to be more of like in a car ride or at a dinner. And it's going to work better with older kids. We're probably talking 10 and up. My 10-year-old would have ideas on like what's important to our family. My 8-year-old probably would. Hadley, I don't know. She would throw some things out, but she might just be like kittens, unicorns, because these are things that are important to her. But as a family, like, what do we prioritize? What do we put first? And we're not looking for right answers. Like, yes, someone might raise their hand and be like, Jesus, but cool, great. Where do you see that? And the point is, like, as a family, what do we prioritize? This is both a chance to assess what is your family prioritizing in the season and to set some standards back. You know what? For us, family dinner, it's important. It's relationships or family breakfast or one meal where we're going to be eating together on purpose. We're going to try to protect this time. We're going to arrange our calendar around it, right? For our family, it is certainly family meals. For our family, it is certainly analog fun. We invest in that intentionally. It's not cheap to get things that don't plug in to play with. Free apps are inexpensive. Blocks aren't. Like, there's not board games, not inexpensive. But those are things that we invest in that we believe are important. We invest in friends and in our church community and in books and things like this. Those are important to us. It's not the only way to do it, but that's a priority. The reason you need that is when a child says, hey, can I do A, B, or C tech activity? Because that's what we're discussing right now. You will say, hey, that actually conflicts with a more important activity. Doesn't mean this is a no forever, but sister has swim. We prioritize sports. Or whatever. The family has agreed we're going on a walk. Family time, higher priority. You know what? Dinner starts in 10 minutes. And no, you can't skip dinner or be late because these things happen. Like, you need priorities. And then there's some things where, like, you know what? For us, it's a toss up. Maybe for your family, television and video games are just a one-to-one parity. And you're like, you know what? We're going to have TV time, but you can play that game. Or maybe we'll all play this game instead of our TV time. All right. The point is, you have to have priorities and you need to have communicated them in some way, even with young kiddos, so that they know, one, what your family expects and values, and two, what the responses should be. Like, they should be able to predict. And if they're asking you repeatedly in order to beat you down, that's different than they're asking you repeatedly because they don't understand what your expectations are. So talk about it. It's a way to get an easy tech win. And if your child is trying to beat you down, that's a spot you get to step in because that's not a tech issue anymore. That's a heart issue. And now we could do some real parenting. Right? We could be like, hey, couldn't help but notice you keep asking me that same question because you didn't like the answer, which means you're not trusting and respecting me. And Jesus tells you to. So what should we do about this? Right? Like that's where we're going to start following up on that. Like, hey, seems like we're not in a good spot. Do we need to take some more time away? Maybe we're going to take a week and we're going to say, you know what, just put that aside. You don't have to ask me for the next week because I'm not mad at you. I'm not punishing you. I'm loving you because it seems like this thing has an inordinate amount of draw on your brain. That's a chance. You don't have to start there, but it's an option. So you're talking priorities. Then you need to talk about content. What's our standard for a family? What do we believe is acceptable and unacceptable? So we've already decided we're going to watch shows, but which ones? We're talking about the violence, about the language, and about the themes. What are they teaching you as far as a lesson you take away? It could be as simply as my kids love that Netflix show, Grizzy and the Lemmings. If you've never seen it, it's about a Canadian Mountie bear who does Tom and Jerry-esque silliness, really, antics with a bunch of lemmings that are fuzzy and adorable, and it never ends well, but the kids love it. Belly laughs. So you want to talk about your content standards. Some of you are going to be like, it's just absolutely mind-scalding stupidity when you watch it. I'm not saying you should watch it, but you should at least have a standard for what you will watch or listen to or play, and talk it out with your kids. And if they disagree, especially when they're hitting upper elementary, middle school, high school, they're welcome to push back. They are part of this conversation. That's, again, a chance for you to get that tech win and say, I totally get it. Maybe there's nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't fit our family. Maybe there is something wrong, and we need to talk about, hey, what are we setting our hearts on, right? Romans 8 reminds us that we set our minds on the things of the Spirit, and we can set our minds on the things of the flesh as well. That involves how we spend our time, what we give our thoughts to when we're not actively doing something, what are we reflecting on and daydreaming on, and what we celebrate. What things, when they happen, we go, woo, that's amazing, or we laugh at, and we go, you know what, it was funny, or it was well done, but it probably wasn't worth celebrating. I probably shouldn't participate. Just because I can doesn't mean I should. Talk that out with your family. Then we want to talk about when and where technology should be used. The easiest one to start with is, hey, we're not going to use our technology at dinner. Now, maybe you have a seasonal thing. I will say in the last week, we've watched the Olympics while we were enjoying a meal. We decided that as a group. We watched it as a family, and it was great. Was it the best conversational time? No, but that's okay. We made that a priority for this season. It's something we really enjoy. The sports are a lot of fun, and our kids are super into it. So we're doing that, and then we'll go back to standard sit-down dinner. We're not doing it every day, but it is something that's happened because it's something for our family to say, you know, when and where we're not going to eat, or we're not going to watch and eat a meal. And in this season, we're going to go ahead and do that for one day. Last night, I think we watched like synchronized diving or something. It was very, very, very niche, but the kids are absolutely into just every single sport. And by the way, if you get a chance, just watch some of the random sports. Watch like the air pistol, watch archery. We watched the snatch heavy weightlifting yesterday. It's a hoot. Go for it. All right. So when and where, but not in our bedrooms, not at meals. Again, within whatever your family's expectations are. You do need to make sure that it's at least been talked out. And then finally, safety, and that's twofold. The first is safety for tech. Which tech are we going to use? Meaning the safest tech possible is going to be tool tech with no apps, no browser, and accountability built in, something like the Bark phone or the Gab phone. Those would be really, really safe tech to start with. On the flip side from that would be an iPhone with social media loaded on it. That would be the least safe. It doesn't mean don't do it. It means make sure you've had a conversation and that this risk is one that you should be taking in this season. The tech needs to be safe, but the use also needs to be safe. Your children need to know what to do when they go to internet spaces, if you're giving them access to the World Wide Web, about strangers, about bullies, about pornography, about mental health, and generally disinformation, like how can you vet something to know if it was real or true, and how to come to you with all the questions they've got. Because if they don't feel safe coming to you with just questions about like friends and life, there's a good chance they're not going to ask you about what they saw on TikTok or Snapchat or Reddit or YouTube. So just make sure you first and foremost, when winning at tech conversations, you have a family standard for your tech use. That you're talking about priorities, content, the when and the where, and your tech safety. And this would probably be a good time to note. I mentioned we watch the Olympics. It's worth noting we definitely have a TV now. And we moved, hence the new backdrop, if you're watching on YouTube. And there's an awesome outdoor space. I couldn't even suggest it for people, just put your TV in an outdoor space. But the previous owner had a COVID project and he built this gorgeous back patio. And there's a wall that was you could put a TV there and it runs off the Wi-Fi. And so it's completely locked down, put lots of parental controls, and it has a Griffin router controlling the Wi-Fi. And we downloaded the Peacock app. So I paid, $14, no ads. It's great. So I'm the proud owner of it. Well, I'm an owner of a TV, and it's been great. So do know that these family expectations can change. We went 2 years, no television. All of our shows were watched on a laptop. Kids still watch their shows on a laptop, but this is more of a family event space. Oh, there's a heater out there, and it's nice. It's lovely. But I feel like confession is good for the soul, bad for the reputation. So we can all make changes to this. This isn't written in stone, but it is what's best for your family in this season and what's a priority for your family. Second then is you need to talk about your child. When you're having a tech conversation, the child who's asking you matters. I had a family yesterday who's yeah, but one of my 3 kids has this issue with technology. I'm right, because it's one of your 3 kids. You're making rules for a family, but they're not going to be one size fits all. You're going to have to make rules that fit your least common denominator. There's going to be a kid who's man, this kid really struggles with video games. That doesn't mean the other 2 get to play and the third just has to watch or go outside and sit by him or herself. It means your family's going to have rules that fit that particular kid. In this season of life, we don't have any video games because dad's the least common denominator. I can't game. I haven't gamed in 13 years because they were inordinately attractive to me. So I had to put some boundaries. Doesn't mean there will never be games in our lives. It means in this season, we're not doing them. And that's because I know me as a parent, then I need to look at my children and say, what technology is a good fit for this kid? The best way to look at it is simply say, all right, does my child have real world trust in each of these areas? Can I trust my child in the way he or she treats his or her friends? It's going to be a big question before you go on social media. Can I trust my child in the way he or she, how would you say it? The stuff he or she gravitates to naturally, the jokes that are made, the content that is celebrated, the things that get them excited, is that stuff that I want more of at the pace of the internet? And then what is my child's reset? What does that look like? Relationships and responsibilities, emotion, sleep, enjoyment, and time. What does that look like in the real world? Luke 16:10 reminds us that when we are faithful with little, we can be faithful with much. We have to show faithfulness on a reset at the pace of real life before we can go to the digital spaces. I have yet to meet anyone who does better online with trustworthiness than they do in real life. It's human nature that there's a little more anonymity and there's a little more opportunity to make mistakes and there's a little more stuff coming in from the side. You didn't go look for trouble, but it kind of found you because it's the internet. So real world trust first. It's an important part when we talk about our children and getting those tech wins. It's perfectly reasonable to say, hey, I know you want this good thing, but I need to make sure it's not a scorpion. It's not going to hurt you or someone else. I love you, and I'm only going to give you things that develop the fruit of the Spirit. And if I see something's off, I'm going to intervene lovingly. So if you've already given a smartphone, or if you've already given access, or that game or that show or that device, it is perfectly reasonable to go back and say, you know what, child of mine, it fits our family standards, but it seems to be a bad fit for you. I had a woman yesterday who said, you know what, this works fine for most of my kids, but there's one kid in particular who seems to be struggling. And the conversation we had just briefly was, you know what, like that's awesome. Maybe go talk to that kid. It's possible that technology, even though there's nothing morally wrong with it, might be a bad fit for this kid right now in this season. Doesn't mean this kid will never use it. You don't all have to go 13 years without a video game like me, but you might have to go a month and just start to slowly wean yourself to the point where real life can be exciting and real relationships can be engaging, and then start to add it back and see if the good stuff starts to tank again, right? All of a sudden, do you become withdrawn again? Do you become anxious again? Do you start to notice that your mind goes to fear or to lust or to anger rather than to Christ? Then if so, then that thing's a cause and you cut it off and gouge it out. But if it's not, then it just needs some better boundaries and you can make it healthy based on using it well. So that's when we're talking about our children, real world trust and building real world opportunities to show digital character and the opportunities they're going to have to engage in areas that will have to be developed in the real world first. What real world activity will this digital activity either extend or replace? And I couldn't find another way to say it. And so I apologize if that comes off as like weirdly condemning, like, well, what are you going to be doing instead? Like I hear that and that's not what I mean. So here's what I mean, because I was thinking of my own family with this. When my child engages in this digital activity, this technological thing they're asking me to do, mom or dad, can I play this game, watch this show, listen to this music, have this device, go, great. What's that going to either be extending that you already do? It's going to help you do more of it or do it better, or replacing, because you only got 24 hours in a day. So what are you going to be doing or not be doing because you're now doing this? And I think the perfect example for our family would be our kids watch shows. Okay. And the shows that we watch simply supplement entertaining, engaging content. So that would be time that they could be reading or doing something outside. And we've said, you know what? In this amount of time on this many days a week with this particular content. So there's 3 different if-thens. That's fine. We're okay that you're not playing outside for this 20 minutes because you're doing this. And this is a fun, engaging, positive activity. There are also some times where we go, you know what? Nope, higher priority, you need to get outside. We've had enough indoor, the stare at our belly buttons time. Another example would be with our kids in video games right now. So certainly dad is one reason. Another thing, Ann and I literally had this conversation 2 weeks ago, was, you know what? Right now, we can't think of something that we wish they were playing a game instead of doing. Like right now we've got board games and we would rather you play any one of our board games than play this game. That was a choice that we made, and that's a conversation you need to have. What's the opportunity cost? When Owen or Henry does Khan Academy online, you're giving up workbook time for that, right? That's an extension, but you're not doing a physical book. You're doing an online math program, and I've been very impressed. Khan Academy is KHAN Academy.com. Ooh, might be .org. I feel like I always do this when I reference it. Sorry, it's one or the other, but you can find it. It's great. And I only use the math side, so I can't speak to the other areas for content, but it gives good reps. It has just enough gamification to be engaging. Owen is a completionist, and he loves himself some 1-week streaks. So he will return to it, but there's actually no other hooks. It's not trying to get you to upgrade to anything or click on any ads or do anything like that. They're simply providing high quality resources for learning math. And every lesson has videos. They auto-generate the math problems. They track your progress. They'll send you an update if you're a parent who's hosting a youth account. I found it very useful, and Owen continues to enjoy that. It's replacing an analog option. But we've decided right now, with his attitude, with his focus, with the growth we've seen, it's a net gain. So we're going to continue doing that. That's what you have to talk about when getting a tech win. You need to talk about your family expectations. Is your child ready? Real world showing digital world is an acceptable place. And third is the question of child, son or daughter of mine, how will we support you in this? When you go into this space and you're going to be playing a game or engaging in friends on social media or searching the internet or listening to music or reading news, how can we make sure that it continues to develop the amazing, beautiful self that you are and not go sideways and build shame and guilt and build a wall in our relationship? And this is what we call accountability. But there needs to be some kind of accountability. And the question is, first, how are we going to support this relationally? So no amount of software and hardware will help you have a good relationship with your child. That has to be a thing first. So software and hardware should support the relationship you have with your kid. If you don't have one, please don't send them to digital spaces. Allow your son or daughter to first be open and communicative at family dinner, in car rides, on walks. Grab little opportunities to talk to your child about how he or she is doing, read the Bible together, pray together, worship as a family. Those are awesome opportunities to build the relational piece. If we can talk in the real world, I can trust you to talk about the digital world as well. The second would be that trust piece. We need to see responsibility in the real world. So when we're talking about how can I support you, I can support you relationally by in the real world engaging. I can support you with trust. And that includes a lack of trust. I get asked this a lot. Well, what should I do for my child? He's 16 or 17, but last time we gave him a smartphone 6 months ago, A, B, and C happened, and he's not sorry about it. And he hasn't said that he wants to change. Okay, cool. Lovingly say, I trust you and what you're saying. You want to make mistakes. You don't want support and accountability. You do want to do what we know is harmful. So I believe you. We're not going to let you into this digital space. That's still a tech win, even though it doesn't feel good, because what you're doing is modeling for your child what selfless love looks like. Your child has promised to make your life miserable. And you go, okay, if that's the road we got to march on, right? This is a prodigal son situation. I'm going to love you anyway. And when you repent and come back because God's changed your heart, I'm going to celebrate that. I'm not going to run you down a list of I told you so's. I'm not going to drag you over the coals. And this isn't miserable for the sake of being miserable. It's miserable because you want to hurt yourself or others, and I won't let you do that. That's very gracious. It's very loving, and it's absolutely appropriate in this. And third and finally is the health piece. You're going to check the health of your child as this conversation continues. How can I support you with accountability? The purpose of Bark or Covenant Eyes or any other form of communication and accountability you've got on there isn't to catch your kid doing something wrong so you can run an I told you so. Instead, it's to say, you know what? I've noticed this seems to be a struggle on your reset. What do you think we can do? Have your child talk through that. My dad was just telling me the story the other day about when we had television. When I was growing up, before we got rid of the TV, I would struggle with turning it off, and I would struggle repeatedly. And my dad was like, it doesn't seem like this is working. Like, what should we be doing? Like, talk to me about what are the things that would really make you feel your mistakes. And I basically walked him through it. I was like, well, Dad, I hate spicy stuff. He's like, what's that mean? I was like, well, I mean, if you gave me hot sauce, that would really feel like punishment. And he's like, so if I just put hot sauce on a spoon? I was like, yeah, that'd be terrible. Like, great. Like, we have a solution now. I don't know why, by the way. Yes, your child could just bold-faced lie to you, but apparently some of us just tell you what to do. And the point isn't finding the proper punishment. The point is having the conversation about, hey, I would love to give you some TV time or some shows or I want to give you these things you want, but I can't do it if it's going to cause self-destructive behavior. What do we need to do to help adjust this? And there's a really good chance your kid has some solutions that you could talk about. The point, though, is check the child's health. So in talking to your kid, how can I support you? Relationally, how can I support you with building that tech trust, showing real world progression so I can extend you digital world trust and responsibility? And then finally, the health piece. How can I make sure that you're well first and then staying well in digital spaces? Reset lets us do that. And those are conversational wins. When we talk about technology, we're not trying to get it perfect the first time. We are modeling for our children. What does it look like to use tech well, to use it from a space of hope rather than a space of need, meaning I am whole and new in Christ, so I can go in these digital spaces and use them with joy and beauty and really appreciate all that. But I don't need it to be okay. I'm not coping with my tech. And when I am, And finally, there's someone loving me and supporting me in that. There's someone who can come alongside me and say, hey, it seems like this tech's out of control. What do you think needs to happen next? What do you want to see for yourself? What do you believe Jesus is calling you to? It might be adding something like a covenantizer or a bark. It might be removing something like a smartphone or social media, or it might be simply taking a break and being like, you know what? We just need some time away. Anna Lemke in her book Dopamine Nation said it's 30 days to reset a brain that's been overstimulated. So if your child's anxious, struggling with sleep, struggling with, just the individual thought life, not seeing themselves the way God sees them. If any of those things are present, it's possible that a step back is actually what we need more than, well, actually, mom and dad, I have to be on this more often because I know everyone's out there and they're having a great time and I'm not a part of it. That's actually a sign that we need to get less time there and realize the world's a big place. There's a lot of people in it, and God's way better than whatever your friends are doing right now. We can't let them run our hearts. We let Jesus run it. So I hope this was encouraging and set you up to start some of these conversations. Try one out. Pick one of these three areas, either the accountability piece or talking about your child and the trust level and whether he or she is ready for this tech, or your family's expectations. You can start it at your next family meal, and the next car ride, and the next family walk, or just as you listen to this podcast and pause and go, what do you think about all this if they're listening with you? But I hope it was encouraging and that it equips and empowers you to have these conversations. If it was, would you share it with others? Let them know that this resource is out here. Would you check out gospelcenteredtech.com? So that is where Anna and my new books are officially out and on the market. You can also just go to Amazon and look up Gospel Centered Tech or The Graceful Disconnect, which is Anna's book. My book is written to help you have these conversations. Anna's book is written to parents, specifically to moms, to help you process what does it look like to raise kids in just a digitally overwhelming world, and how can we focus our eyes on Christ in that process. So we hope that you would be encouraged by that. And if you want me to come out and run some of these workshops or conversations with your church, your school, your organization, you can reach out at gospeltech.net. I would love to do that. Or you can email me directly, nathan@gospeltech.net, or find us at Love God Use Tech on Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. And with that, please join us next week as we continue this conversation about how we can love God and use tech.